I'm a hotel receptionist. Whatever you do, never check into room 13. It seemed like the perfect summer job. A small hotel, a few miles out of town, in need of a few junior staff members to help keep things running during the tourist season. It seemed like exactly what I needed. But I could never have predicted what happened within the walls of that hotel. On my first day, I was paired with an older woman, Kelly, who oversaw the hotel management. She gave me a walkthrough of everything that I had to do, along with several rules and instructions that I had to abide by. It started as a very standard list. Stay out of the way of the guests, keep your uniform clean and tidy, normal things. Then came the final, and most important rule. Kelly seemed to lean in closer to me, her voice almost at a whisper. There's just one more rule, she told me. Do not, under any circumstances, ever go into room 13. Of course, I had a million questions about this strange rule. I had walked past the door to room 13 several times on my tour of the hotel, and it had looked exactly like all of the other doors. What's so special about room 13? I asked Kelly, curious. She shook her head. It's a rule that comes from the hotel owner, Kelly explained. No one is allowed in there, not even me. It's kept locked at all times, and that's all I know about it. I accepted that response, and thought nothing more of it. Perhaps, the hotel owner had his own reasons for keeping the room locked. There was no reason to believe that anything was going on in there. Of course, I later came to realize that I should have seen red flags much sooner. It had been a few weeks of working in the hotel, without problems. Everything had gone smoothly, and I had basically forgotten all about the bizarre rule of room 13. I had become familiar and friendly with my fellow members of staff. I was particularly close with Mark, one of the waiters, or Elizabeth, a housekeeper. I often found myself working closely with Catherine, a junior staff member like myself. Everything was going well, until one night. I was getting ready to go home, one evening after my shift had ended, when Kelly approached me. She explained that her night shift manager had called in sick, and asked if I would do her a favor and stay on for overtime. I agreed, and the first hours of the night shift went smoothly. It was only after all of the guests had retired to their hotel rooms, and gone to sleep, that I finally started to notice something extremely odd. I was walking through the hallways of the hotel, when I passed room 13. I thought nothing of it, until I heard a small noise, almost like a scratching sound, coming from inside the room. It made me stop in my tracks, and my instincts wanted to open the door and see what was going on, but I remembered the rule. Do not go into room 13. Whatever these strange noises were, I would have to ignore them. About an hour later, I was checking my emails in the hotel office, when I heard a loud crash. Thinking that someone was in danger, I rushed up to where I had heard the noise, taking myself all the way up to where I was, once again, standing outside the door of room 13. I could have sworn that I heard the sound coming from in there, but that couldn't be possible. Knowing that I was not allowed to enter room 13, I turned around to walk away. Suddenly, I heard another loud crash. It was undeniable that it had come from room 13. I couldn't ignore all of these strange sounds coming from the room. I had always been taught to act on instinct, and all of my instincts told me that there was something very, very wrong with room 13. Whatever, or whoever, was in there, it was giving me a very strange feeling. I don't quite know what came over me, but I suddenly started to press on the handle of the door, trying to force it open. I was well aware that trying to enter room 13, against the rules, could lose me my job, but I couldn't ignore the noises coming from the room. Something could really be wrong, and I didn't want to take that risk. The door was locked, but it was not impossible to force it open. It took a lot of strength, but eventually, the door opened a crack, and then I was able to pull it open enough for me to be able to carefully slip into the room. The first thing that I noticed was that the room was pitch black inside. I tried to adjust my eyes, but I couldn't see a thing. It was like stepping into a complete void of darkness. I knew where the light switch should have been, so I felt all the way up the wall for it, but there was no switch. I tried to take a step forward into the room, but as I stepped, my foot hit something. It was solid enough to make me lose my balance slightly. Slowly, I bent down to touch whatever this thing was. As soon as I put my hand on it, I could feel that there was something very strange going on. It almost felt like a leg, almost like that of a person. But that couldn't be possible. I reached out, behind me, but all I could feel was another leg, seemingly coming from another body. I reached out again, only to feel another. An arm this time, then a torso, another leg. It was endless. I felt as though I was surrounded. Except, there was something odd about these arms and legs. They just didn't feel quite alive. I immediately felt sick. There was no way, absolutely no way that I could be standing in the middle of a room full of bodies, but it all made sense. The strange rule about not stepping foot in room 13. Of course. It all made sense. This was where the bodies were hidden. I didn't want to believe it, but there seemed like no other explanation. I felt completely sickened, my head spinning, a shiver running up my spine. There was no way. I'd never even seen a dead body before, let alone be surrounded by them in a pitch-black hotel room. Was this what happened to people who entered room 13? I put a hand on the wall to steady myself, and I suddenly felt the light switch. Feeling relieved by that, I quickly turned it on, and watched light flood the room. This was it. I was mentally preparing myself for the sight of, possibly over 20 dead bodies, a sight that would surely make me sick. However, when the light turned on, I was not met with the horrifying sight of countless murder scenes. Instead, all lined up around the room, some perfectly propped up, and others sprawled on the floor, were human-sized, doll-like figures. They looked just, almost human, except for one eerie difference. They didn't have eyes. Just black, void-like holes where eyes should have been. Their necks were oddly floppy too, drooping to the side. What was most horrifying about these life-size dolls was that they almost exactly resembled all of the hotel staff members that I had become so familiar with. I saw the doll version of Kelly, her head falling into her lap. I saw Mark, the waiter, with huge black holes where his eyes should have been. I saw Elizabeth, who was sprawled on the floor, legs sticking out. I even saw Catherine, propped up against the wall, like she was in a child's dollhouse. I wanted to scream, run away, do anything. This was somehow worse than seeing the disgusting sight of bodies. This was 10 times creepier, and made me feel goosebumps up my arms. I wanted to drive away from the hotel, from the town, and never look back. The one thing that still stuck in my mind was the fact that every single staff member had a doll here, even the newest hires. Everyone had a lifelike, floppy doll, looking like an eyeless corpse. The only doll that was missing, the only member of staff that didn't have a matching doll, was me. There was no doll in room 13 that resembled me. Somehow, that fact was far more chilling. I was about to take my phone out of my pocket, to take photos, or call the police, or do anything about this terrifying situation, when all of a sudden, the room went black. Pitch black. I tried to move again, but I couldn't. My legs would not stand up and run, my arms would not reach out to steady myself. I couldn't move. I was fixed, I was stuck, I was trapped. Just then, I felt someone holding my shoulders, propping me up against the wall. I wanted to scream, or see who it was, but it felt like I was trapped inside my own body. I was completely unable to move. The hands extended my arms and legs, and I even felt the hands around my neck, making it flop forward ever so slightly, just as it had done on the dolls. That was when I realized it. The dolls inside room 13 were not lifelike copies of the hotel staff members, they were the hotel staff members. And I was about to meet the very same fate, in room 13. If only I had just listened.